Hello everyone. Today we're going to take a deep dive into the SCU6x controller. I have a demo set up here with the SCU6x controller in the back and a couple of sensors connected to it. What we're going to do is look at the home screen or the main operator interface screen, and we're going to look at what are the things that are available in that screen, how an operator can use to kind of understand what's going on with the system, and also use it for troubleshooting purposes and things like that. We have the SCU6x screen right here, so I'm going to zoom in to that, and we're going to do a deep dive into all the buttons that are available in the operator interface. We'll talk a little bit about the connections as well, and then finish up with what are some of the common troubleshooting ideas or tips based on the information that is available on the home screen. First and foremost thing that I want to point out is what we call as the heartbeat LED. This is basically the bottom left-hand corner, and this particular LED is blinking between red and green. In the SCU6x, there's actually another LED, a physical LED that's available on the side, which is labeled B0, and that will also blink between green and no light. So we call it a heartbeat, which means that this is very critical, and we want to make sure that this LED is blinking all the time. So this is again one of those things which is used for troubleshooting purposes. If you call us and say, hey, something is happening, nothing is working when we touch the operator interface, the first thing that we're going to ask is that, hey, is this heartbeat LED blinking? And what it is indicating is that there is the program, the motherboard is running, and the motherboard is communicating back to the operator interface and the motherboard. If there is no communication between the display and the motherboard, then this LED would stop blinking. So that's a good indication to say that there's something wrong with just the touchscreen operator interface. The motherboard is still working fine. The next thing that we focus on is going to be this top right hand corner. It says B4.2A. It's kind of hard to see for you, but believe me, there is a firmware number there. So that is basically the firmware number or the firmware version number for this particular controller. This is another common thing that we would ask, especially for troubleshooting purposes, what that firmware number is. And if that doesn't give us enough information, we do also have another firmware number on the back, which is printed on our product label, and that is for if we want to get deep down into it. So when do we change these firmware numbers on the top here? Anytime there is a significant change where we are doing a bug fixing, we would change that firmware number. And also anytime there is some UI changes, so anything related to the buttons, adding a new screen or removing a different screen, we would change that firmware number. So in general, we don't remove any features, we only add features to our system. So most often, if you have a product manual that says version 4.2A, most likely it will be applicable to a version 4.1 or 4.0 as well. Another note, if you're familiar with our SCU6x controllers, or if you're familiar with roll-to-roll technologies, we had an SCU5 controller before, and now we have the SCU6. The SCU6 all start with version 4 dot something, and SCU5 all start with version 3 dot something. That is the firmware number. The next thing we want to focus on is this bar right there, which is called as the web position indicator. And depending upon what sensor we have connected, that bar will show the position of the web. So for example, if I put the web there, you can see that it's showing that position. And the way the web moves depends upon other parameters, but that's indicating the web position. Another key thing on the bottom left, right above that heartbeat LED, is called a web detect indicator. Right now, you can't see anything, it's gray. But when I present the web there, it turns green. When I take it off, it's gray. So that is what we call as a web detect indicator. When you are under normal operating conditions, that should be green all the time. I'm gonna make it kind of flicker back and forth just by moving the web closer or farther away from that sensor. And you don't want that to be blinking like this. That's not a good sign. And then the first thing that we are going to look at is the sensor installed properly? Is there something in the background on the sensor that we need to consider? And is it angled properly so that it's not picking up something and losing the web position? Both heartbeat and web detect indicator are two important things that are available on the home screen. On the SCU6x, we have these two buttons which say sensor 1 and sensor 2. And essentially what it is that these allow us to configure our sensors however way we want. Our sensors are one-sided, which means that we could have the web come in from either direction, and this is what we call as a sensor orientation. So it could come from this way, where it's coming from the right to left, or it comes from left to right. So our controller can handle either of those conditions. We just need to be able to tell it how to do it. For all our sensors, the orientation is defined this way. For the 48mm sensor, there's actually a label that says left and right. So if you look here, you would see that there is a right and a left indication. That means that if I present a web and I see that left label, that means we are looking at the left edge of the web. If we come this way, we're looking at the right edge of the web, and that's how we know the orientation for the 48mm sensors. For anything from 96 to 960, the orientation is this way. Where that cable comes out, that is going to be our right, and where the cable is not present, that's going to be our left. So this region is going to be our right, and this region is going to be our left. So if we present the web and we see the left edge, like what I'm showing here, so that's going to be configured as a left edge orientation. And if we present the web like this, where we're looking at the right edge of the web, then that's going to be the right edge. So these bars, these green squares, are indicating how that particular sensor is configured. If you press that once, it's going to toggle between the states. I'll do that again. So the four states that are available are no sensor, which is what this is. Both those LEDs are turned off. If I press it once, sensor 1 is configured as left sensor, and that's what this is. And if I press it another time, it will go to center sensor, which means that you have both edges of the web. If I press it one more time, it's going to go to the right sensor. And if I press it one more time, I can disable the sensor altogether. So that's what that button is allowing us to do, is to configure the orientation of the sensor whenever we press that button. One key thing to note is that if we have this sensor cable disconnected, then this button will only have two states. One is enable and the other one is disable. Because it's either enables the sensor or disables the sensor, the controller automatically knows that there's no sensor connected to it, so it's not going to toggle between the states. It's just going to enable it and disable it. So when I reconnect this back in, then we have the ability to get all four states. Right now the sensor is disabled. I have it connected. Now it can go to the left sensor, center sensor, right, and disable. Likewise, you can do the same thing for the sensor 2. And for now, I'm going to disable both sensors and just enable the right sensor as left edge. The sensor button allows the operator to go from one state to another state. So one of the key things why we have this functionality is that we want the operators to have the flexibility to move the sensor from one side to another side and have a simple couple of steps to switch from one edge of the web to the other edge of the web. There are scenarios where when they're running one job, they want to write on one edge, and when they're running another job, they want to run on another edge. Also, we have the reason to enable and disable the sensors because there are situations where they might have two different locations where they are guiding the web and for two different products. So for example, let's say they are running a 20-inch wide web for one job and a 30-inch wide web on another job. Instead of moving the sensor from one edge to the other edge when the width changes, the operators can just have two sensors installed at two different cross machine direction position and then just enable that sensor for that job for one time and then enable the other sensor for the other job at the other time. Our controller will automatically figure that out. Whatever the sensor is enabled or how many our sensor is enabled, that's what is going to be used for guiding purposes, and it will take care of everything else automatically. So that's the reason why we have the ability to enable and disable the sensor. There are also applications where we have one actuator guiding the web, and there might be a scenario where we want to guide the web with one sensor in one direction and the other sensor in another direction. These are commonly seen in machines where the web can go both in forward and reverse direction, especially in an unwind or a rewind. You can have it configured where in one direction the system behaves like an unwind with a sensor installed on the fixed machine frame, and then when it goes in the backward direction, the same system behaves like a rewind where the other sensor would be installed in a chasing kind of configuration. In those cases, we can switch between the two sensors pretty quickly just from the home screen without us having to navigate to multiple screens to enable or disable the sensor. So that's the functionality for the sensor orientation buttons. So I will present the web right now, and we're looking at the left edge of the web. And as you can see that the white region in the web position indicator is representing the web, and the black region is representing the background or no web. So if I move back and forth, if I have the left edge configured for the orientation, then as I move from right to left, the web position is going to increase from right to left, just like what you see on the screen. If we change that orientation to right, the bar automatically switches and it goes in the other direction, just like what we expect. I'm going to disable it and enable this sensor, but I'm going to do a center orientation for that. This means that we have a sensor that is wide enough that it can see both edges of the web. The first thing that you're going to notice is that there is a green line in the middle, and that line is indicating the center position of that sensor. And when we present the web here, then you're going to see both edges. So that means that the left side is dark, the right side is dark, the middle region, which represents the web, is going to be white. And then the green line is the center line of the web, and that's what it's showing there. It's being moved from left to right. So when we do center guiding, the reference or the edge position for that guiding is indicated by this green line right there. So in this case, it's center. The controller automatically knows that if you set it in center mode, then it needs to look at the middle position of the web. And if we put it back to left mode, it's going to look at the left edge, and the green line is still there, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's at the leftmost point of the white region, and that's what we call as the edge position. So this is what is used for control. Now, irrespective of what we have, it doesn't change my edge position. And also notice that I only have one edge of the web, or I have both edges of the web right here, but it's only looking at the left edge. So when I have this small piece of paper where I see both edges, if it is configured for the left edge, it will only pick up the left edge. And if I do center, you can see both edges, and if I do right, it'll only pick up the right edge. And that's how it works. So it doesn't matter if the web is wide enough or wider than the sensor field of view. How we configure the orientation will dictate what edge is used for guiding or control purposes. So there are situations where we would have to use two sensors, and if the sensor is not wide enough or the web is much wider than our sensors, then we would have that scenario. I have this sensor 2, which is this sensor. I have that configured for left edge. In sensor 1, I have that configured for right edge. And then now if I present a paper that is partly seen by one sensor and partly seen by the other sensor, then we're going to see that. And then again, the green line indicates the center line position, and then the right edges and light of the left edges indicate the edges of the web. One of the things that I want to point out is that in normal situations, we will always ask that when you do center guiding with two sensors, that you use two of the same sensors with the same measuring range and same resolution. It just makes it easy and it avoids any confusion. Here, I just wanted to show that it's possible to use different sizes of sensors when you do center guiding. Where does this confusion come from? Just to show on the screen what I mean by that, we have one sensor configured to left and the other sensor configured to the right. And when we do that, the screen is going to be split up into two regions, or the web position indicator is going to be split up into two regions. If I present the web on just one sensor, so I'm presenting it on sensor 1, which is configured as right sensor, you can see that only that right half is being updated. Likewise, only the left half is being updated. And then when I have a web wide enough, it sees both sensors, then the portion of the left half corresponding to the left sensor and the portion of the right half corresponding to the right sensor is only going to show up there. So the confusion arises mainly because we have one sensor that is almost 6 times or 8 times wider than this sensor, but we only have the same 50% viewing area on the top. So when we move just a little bit on the bottom sensor, it seems like it's moving a lot, whereas when we move a little bit on the top, the left sensor, then it seems like it's moving little. But in reality, it's moving the same amount, but it's just that on the screen we're not scaling that based on the two different sensors range. So that's the difference. So we covered the main things with the sensors in terms of the orientation, how the web position is indicated, how you get the web detect signal and things like that. One other key feature that we have is what we call as reset guide point. This enables our operators to switch from one width to another width without moving the sensor itself. In a traditional application where you have a narrowband sensor, let's say it's about 6 millimeters that's looking at one edge of the web. If you change from one web width to another web width, then what they have to do is they have to physically move the sensor. That's like having a rail and move it there. And the other thing that they do is that they might have to they might have a micrometer or a fine adjustment to move that sensor just a little bit based on what the guide point is. All of these things could be done digitally from our home screen, and that's what I'm going to show you next. To show the guide point adjustment, I have one sensor connected to the controller and enabled, and it's set to the left sensor configuration. So you can see that when the web moves here, it's the left sensor configuration. Now what we want to do is we want to change the guide point. Let's say we are running a different job at a different location. Instead of moving the sensor, we want to change the guide point. So for example, this is the web and we have threaded the web, and this is the correct location, or this is the ideal location where we want the new reference to be, or the guide point to be. All that the operator needs to do to reset to this guide point is to press that button and accept, and that will change that guide point. So the guide point offset on this home screen is showing us how far away from the middle is the current guide point. And right now, it's exactly in the middle of the sensor's field of view, and that's why it's 0. And visually, it's also indicated by this bar right here, and this is exactly in the middle of the field of view of that. Now, if we go to the left of the guide point, and let's say this is our new reference, and the operators, instead of moving the sensor, they can move the guide point. So all that they need to do is press the reset guide point and say accept. Now you can see that the guide point number moved there, and also this guide point bar moved there. So that one more time, let's say they want to use this current web position as the reference, then press reset guide point and accept, and it moves there. So this number right here, the guide point offset, what it's showing is that what is the offset from the middle, and that is indicated in millimeters. So that's to reset the guide point. Now, if you really want to move the guide point without the web, you can still do that by dragging that and doing that. And we call that as a cross guide point adjustment. So you can just grab that reference bar and move it to wherever you want and press accept, and that will do that. So that's what we call as a cross guide point adjustment. And then we don't allow you to change the guide point all the way to one side like that. So if we do that, it will go only to about a certain amount, and that's just for safety purposes. And then just to be sure that somebody doesn't intend to do something, what we also do is that if somebody pressed this button, and let's say that it shows the reset guide point to a new guide point, and if you didn't intend to do it, all you have to do is just leave it alone for a little bit, and then that will automatically reset. Unless you press accept, any change to this, accidental change, it will show that the current or intended guide point is minus 16.7, but if you don't accept it, it will go back to its original guide point reference, whatever you had before. So just to avoid any accidental changing, we do that. And it's the same thing with this reset guide point. If you press that button, unless you press the accept, anything that we do here is not going to change the guide point unless somebody intentionally says that that's what they want to do. We want to make sure that we have everything set up properly, where we're able to see the web. Now in the following, we will look at how to set up the controller for guiding or actuation. The operator can use that home screen to put the web guide in auto, put it in manual, and also be able to manually jog it left and right, and then also do any servo centering operation or things like that. That's what we're going to see next. So I do have a couple of things set up here. So I have one sensor that is set up to look at the left edge of the web. That's shown here. Sensor 1 is connected and it's set up to look at the left edge of the web. And in this particular case, I don't have an actuator connected, but I can still show most of the items there through that interface. So these buttons on the bottom, these are the buttons where somebody could put the web guide in auto or manual or jog or servo center. We'll go through this one by one. The jog and the servo center buttons are what we call as momentary buttons. This one is basically auto or manual. When it's in red, it's in manual mode, and if we press it and if it changes to green, it's in automatic mode. And As you can see, it's seeing the web right there. When I move the web, you can see that the web is oscillating here. And these are jog left and jog right, and then the SO center.